Today's podcast is sponsored by my new favorite animated TV show, Tuttle Twins, the first cartoon series to teach kids principles of freedom, economics, and liberty, and to be funny in the process. Nowadays, hidden political agendas are constantly forced on your kids in entertainment and in schools. Tuttle Twins is a hilarious cartoon series that teaches kids about the principles of freedom without being overly preachy. It's educational and hilarious, and there are lots of jokes for adults too. The best part, you can watch Tuttle Twins entirely for free. Just go to TuttleTwins.tv, that is Tuttle Twins, TuttleTwins.tv, and over there you can watch all of the episodes for free. One more time, that's TuttleTwins.tv. Highly recommend it. Go check it out.
I am the man, sick with the slang, sick and I'm destined for fame. Do for the fam, not for the grand, stunting you're destined for pain. I do not front, I do not scam, put some respect on my name. Sick like Cobain, click and I bang, y'all gon' remember the name. Y'all gon' remember the name.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to welcome you back to the Real Talk with Zuby podcast. On today's episode, we have got on two very special guests. This is Mock and Daisy, the co-hosts of the Chicks on the Right podcast. Welcome to the show.
So glad to be here.
Delighted.
Happy to see you. So I've done a brief intro there, but why don't you both introduce yourselves to the audience?
You go first, Mary. You want to go
Me?
first? Kind of do like the Reader's Digest version for us? You're really good
Okay. Well, I'm Mock or Miriam, either way, from the Chicks on the Right. We've been around for 13 plus years and have been doing our podcast on a daily basis now for, a year and a half, on a weekly basis for at least 3 years. And we've, of course, had the Chicks on the Right website since February of 2009. We've done some radio in between all of that. We've written a book, and now we're just full-time podcasters and loving every minute of it.
Yeah. And that was good. That was a really good Reader's Digest. And then I am Daisy, or Amy Jo Clark, and I am half of Chicks on the Right. And I think she covered most of it. We're all over the socials. We're sort of like the OGs of this. I don't want to say the movement, but we are some of the older ones who've been around a long time. We were some of the first ones to get shut down on social. We always say that we're the OGs of getting shut down before getting shut down was cool. And we've been around in this scene for quite some time. We've been around for the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. And we're kind of like, I don't want to say cockroaches of the industry, but we have definitely been through, we have survived a lot and been through a lot in this. And so we're here and we're still loving it. And now we're doing it full time, which is really wonderful and just a blessing for both of us.
That's awesome. So how did you both start out on this journey, and how did you actually meet each other?
The question, right? Do you want me to start?
Yes, please do.
Well, back in the day when we were in corporate America, she was a technical writer and I was a recruiter. And I actually had a position open for which I interviewed her over the phone. And this was way back in 2007. And so at the time, she had her full name, including her maiden name, hyphenated with her current name on her resume. And it was one that you can't easily forget. And so even though that position got filled by someone else at the time, fast forward a year later, and I saw her name pop up on one of my friends on Facebook's profiles, that he was a friend of hers. And I recognized her name right away, and I couldn't understand it because this friend of ours was in Georgia, which is where my husband is from. And so after some discussion, it turned out that my husband went to school with Amy Jo starting in like 7th grade?
Elementary school. Yeah. Elementary middle,
school.
And high school. We went to school together in Georgia. Yeah. And grew
Which
up
is
in the same
crazy.
neighborhood. Right. Grew up in the same neighborhood.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
and not at all the way that we were introduced to each other. So of course, that's one of those things that you have to like have a girly scream about. So I reached out to her on Facebook and said, oh my gosh, you probably don't remember interviewing with me, but we talked a year ago, and look, you went to school with my husband, and we just connected over Facebook, which was a lot different than the Facebook of today.
Right.
Immediately. And then I ended up hiring her after all. And you tell the rest.
And then we, I ended up working at the same company as Miriam, and we started talking each day. We went to lunch every day, and we started talking about, life like moms do, life, kids, just everyday things, like women do, shoes, clothes, things like that. And then we also started finding ourselves talking about politics, which is something that we had never really talked about before. And so each one of us, and we were talking about things like, this new guy, Obama, who's this guy? Everybody's so starry-eyed over this Obama guy. Who is this? What's going on? And we started realizing, this is really crazy that we're talking about so much political stuff during our free time. This is really weird. And I went to her one day and I'm like, we should start a blog because, we talk about this stuff in a way that is very conversational and not so pundit like and not very buttoned up, and it's more mini skirt rather than suit. And so we should start a blog because maybe somebody will read it, who knows. And so we started the blog Chicks on the Right, the website chicksontheright.com, and it started gaining some popularity. We had a little bit of a cult following, I think, for a while, and then it just took off. And that was in 2009 when we started the site. And it took a couple years, and we were very diligent about writing early mornings, lunchtime, after work. I mean, we had full-time jobs. We had full-time jobs forever, for years. And that site was our baby. And we just, we're very diligent about it. And we gained popularity over the years. And it's just kind of amazing how that worked out. I don't know if that would happen today, but back 13 years ago, when people actually read things,
and not just headlines.
Right. And we were, we wrote things. We actually wrote, long form articles a little bit more back then. But then people didn't have attention spans of fleas. I think that people were interested in sitting down and reading things. We actually had a little bit of popularity, and we gained it, and those were good times. I love those times. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Speaking of attention spans, I think we're living in this age where everyone's attention span is either like 3 seconds or 3 hours. So you have the flourishing of, very long form podcasts, which are killing, corporate news media. People are willing to sit down and listen for hours, but at the same time, people can't read to the end of a tweet to see what you're actually talking about. So it's this weird juxtaposition.
It is.
Did you have
Absolutely.
Did you have any particular articles that you wrote on your blog that kind of blew up, or was it a very gradual rise?
It's interesting that you ask that, because back in the day when we first attached our Facebook page to our website, when that became a good idea for people to do, back in the day when Facebook was in a chronological order and people that you follow, you actually saw their content. It almost didn't matter at that time in the earlier days what we wrote about. Our posts were seen by thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Our reach was enormous. And so it's interesting that over the years, we're at 1.5 million followers on Facebook now, and only a tiny fraction of the number of people who used to see our content see it now, which is why, of course, all the Elon Musk and Twitter news is so exciting, right? Because it's opening up maybe a return to the days of yore on social media, when you actually got to see the content of the people you chose voluntarily to follow. But in terms of specific posts that caught people's attention, man, we write about literally everything, all of the social, cultural, political stuff that is going on in the news of the day. And so that's what it feels like. People have responded because we're talking about things that are happening in the here and now.
Yeah, I think, and even stuff about feminism, I think I'm not saying we were the only ones writing about it, but I think, 13 years ago, this whole, I don't even know what wave of feminism we're on now, but, feminism
3.5
has changed. Right. Is that what it is, Zuby? Because I don't even know.
Somewhere between 3 and 4.
We can't keep up. We can't keep up because, it's feminism is so weird now. It's so different than the feminism of the late 60s and the early 70s, and the feminism that our mothers were exposed to, right? So it's and so we make fun of feminism a lot because feminism has become so much about, we want our free crap, and the government is our sugar daddy, and we free the nipple, but don't look at my nipples, and it's just it's like this strange, it's just it's the weirdest movement ever. And we don't like
Yeah.
to be lumped in with those women. But we feel like we are very strong, independent, running our own business women. But yet those women, they hate us. They hate conservative women. They demonize us. And it's just a strange fight we have, like an infighting we have going on between feminists and conservative women, and they don't want us sitting at their table. It's just bizarre. Like so we've written a lot about feminism over the years, and how women, there's just like this strange infighting going on between women, and that it's sad, but it's also something that needs to be exposed. And so we've talked about that a lot over the years.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to being a strong woman who runs her own business.
Right. Totally.
I faced a lot of
Well,
flack
you
and
are a
controversy
woman.
for.
Right.
You
Exactly.
are a woman when you weightlift. And
Right.
I saw your Twitter fight yesterday with the guy that said, how can Elon Musk run Twitter when he doesn't have a master's degree? Your exchange on that was absolutely hilarious. So I love that you become a woman when it works for you. I think you're taking really good advantage of that.
You can be whatever you want. You can be whatever
Exactly.
you want now, right? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I say it's feminism 3.5. I think what you were discussing is what I consider wave 3, which is the angry, entitled, hating men type. And then I consider wave 4 is the not even being able to define what a woman is type. So we're somewhere at the crux of these things where there's this interesting, people are there talking woman this, woman that, and the same people are telling you women can have penises and menstruate and give birth and so on. I've used this fact very much to my advantage and to my delight, but we live in a very strange time.
It is strange. And I've got a 12-year-old girl who is a competitive swimmer. That happens to be her sport. So then I get very, I feel very strongly about, say a biological boy coming in and trampling what she does, because she works, 6 days a week. She's in the pool 3 hours a day working on her sport. And who knows, she may get a college scholarship one day, God willing, because, college is expensive. She may get that trampled on by a biological boy. Well, I feel very strongly about that. And so
that's because
a lot of the people who are
that's because you're a bigot. That's why.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a transphobe, right?
That's the only viable reason you would have a problem with boys smashing your daughter in the pool.
And this is the thing,
in the races.
And that's the thing, Zuby, where are the feminists? Like where are these women back when my mom was my mom was in this, but growing up when feminism became like this giant thing. Where are those feminists like standing up for women?
To give them credit, the ones who do get derided as being TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. Many of them have actually been banned from social media. So there is this, to give them credit, there are self-identified feminists who have been pushing back against this for many years. And a lot of them have been sidelined. A lot of them have been silenced. I know a couple who I've actually had on my podcast, Kelly J. Keane, who goes by the name Posey Parker from the UK, and Megan Murphy from Canada, who runs the Feminist Current blog. They both got banned from Twitter several years ago for discussing this issue and for saying that men are not women and men cannot be women. So there are people speaking up, but they've been pushed to the side. If you see what's going on with J.K. Rowling, who is, literally one of the most successful women in the world, who's had the courage to take a stand on this issue, and they're unsuccessful at canceling her, but Lord knows they've been trying for several years.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too that like there was a time I remember, and this goes way back, but I remember when we were first starting to talk about feminism, we actually talked about it in a way where Amy Jo and I, Daisy and I, wanted to reclaim feminism for conservative women. But then it's like the crazier feminists became, the more we wanted nothing to do with the title. And so it used to be, no, we are feminists, we're conservative feminists. And now it's just like, no, I don't want to be associated with the word because it's become so corrupt and bizarre that I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's like y'all are back crap. We don't want it. Y'all are just back crap crazy. To stay away from us. Right.
Yeah. I've actually had this discussion with several women over the past few years, because I don't think it's salvageable. I don't think that term can be salvaged. I think it's too far gone. I think that when people hear the word feminist or feminism, most people don't have a positive connotation with it. And I think it's too late. It's been claimed by crazies for honestly most of my life. Like, I've never had a positive view of feminism, not because the original supposed incarnation of it has anything wrong with it. I think most modern day people in the West are very much equalists, which would make them, feminists by the old school definition. But it's just become this angry, confused and confusing and honestly mostly negative movement as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's a shame, because I don't think that I try not to paint with a broad brush, and I know that not all feminists are like that, but I just think the connotation's too negative now.
Yeah, it's like what's the meme? It says not all feminists are like that. All feminists. Right. Yeah.
So before, you were telling me that you are some of the original people to get shut down. So when you say shut down, what do you mean? What happened?
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
So it was January of 2013, and I had written a post on our website at Chicks on the Right about Jay Carney, who was this press secretary for Obama at the time. And I'd said something in the headline that Jay Carney can kiss my assular area, I believe was the exact headline.
We're very professional. Very professional.
I mean, as the true professional that I am.
Right.
And so I posted it and shared it on Facebook, as we did with all of our posts. And at that point, I think what happened is, because we were starting to see a rise in popularity, a minimal one. I mean, I think we had like 50,000 followers or something at the time. Right. And a bunch of liberals, I'm assuming, got butthurt about that title and reported the post en masse. And so that set off the newly created algorithms that Facebook had at the time. And so I got kicked out of our page, and I still had access to my personal page, but I got a notification saying, you don't get to post on this because, here's the bad girl thing that you did. Here's your slap on the hand. Well, I went into a panic, immediately called her. This was like 5 o'clock in the morning on a work day. Right. And I was like, I'm out. I can't get into Facebook. You have to tell everybody. Yeah. And so she went on this gigantic PR blitz. And that's what got us even more attention, which often happens in situations like this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like the more that you shut conservatives down, it's like that Chick-fil-A effect, right? It's sort of like the boycott effect. And I think that happened to us. We were just one of the first to have that happen to us. And so what happened is, I just told everybody. I went kind of crazy and told everybody and started, oh my God, we're going to get shut down. I'll be next. Because I thought I was going to be next, because she's such a bad influence, Zuby. She's terrible. She's terrible.
Very problematic. I know.
So I thought, of course, I'm going to get shut down. And so I'm telling everybody, and everybody's telling everybody else. And it was like this telephone game effect. And so Todd Starnes from Fox News picked up the story about us. And then he ended up calling Miriam and asking her about, us. And I think, what was it, like Breitbart or The Blaze picked it up?
The Blaze,
The Blaze, they picked it up. And we got some more popularity from it. And so it was like, what they wanted to do was squelch us. What they ended up doing was getting us more clicks and more eyeballs and all, everything that they wanted us not to have. And so, good job, liberals.
It's funny. If you can weather these storms, and I've seen so many examples of this, if you can weather these storms, then it tends to massively work in your favor. It always backfires on the people who are trying to do it. You just have to get through the storm.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. And in fact, that
precisely.
wave of publicity is actually what led us to do our radio show. So
Mhm.
it got the attention of a local radio program director, and he reached out. And then that's what got us to both leave the corporate world initially and go to radio. And so we did that for a few years. And now we're finally able to do just our own podcast and our own thing. And we report to no one but each other. And it's
Yeah,
a whole new world, which is great.
That's
exactly.
awesome.
And
Well,
yeah.
good for you. Good for you on achieving that. A big question I have is, so you've been in this commentary world in the USA since, you said, 2007, is that right?
9.
9.
2009.
Yeah.
2009. So in this time period, how have you seen it change? Because I often say that it seems like around 2012 when we sort of entered some alternate timeline, and since then stuff's always been increasingly getting weirder and weirder. I'm from the UK. I'm not from the US. I remember a little bit about stuff going on in the US around 2008, 2009, but I wasn't following the politics that much. I wasn't following, I certainly wasn't publicly commentating on this stuff. But even in the time I've been doing whatever I do, it seems to have changed a lot. So what are the big changes that you have seen?
Well, just from an overarching standpoint, I think people have gotten meaner and dumber.
Mm. Mm.
I think that's right.
I know that sounds terrible, but it's true. I mean, they've and
Mhm.
honestly, we've changed. I personally, I don't want to speak for Marianne, but I feel like I've changed. When we first started, it was really tough to be called a racist. That was the
Mm.
hardest. I mean, that hurt my soul. I mean, it's like when we first started, I'd never dreamed that people would call me a racist. And
Mhm.
they would call me other horrible, horrible names just because I had like Republican after my name or conservative after my name, right? And so I was like, I don't know if I can do this, because that was really hard. And we
Mhm.
are actually nice people. I'm probably not as nice now as I was then, because you develop a thick skin. You get beat up, and then you just get
Mhm.
tougher after 13 years of taking beatings. But I mean, when we first started, we actually were genuinely nice people. She was sweet as could be, and now she's kind of like a bunny with fangs. She's more like, yeah. But I mean, after like 2 years of being called racist, then it just loses its. It's like you just hear it all the time, and you're like, gosh,
Mhm.
I know I'm not what they're saying I am, and then you start hearing it, and it's like one ear and out the other. And so
Yes.
I guess like I'm trying to make a comparison between hearing those things all the time and then like the discourse that we see every day. When people are beating each other up like on Twitter every single day, I feel like all that just sort of it makes people less human
Mhm.
towards one
Mhm.
another. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to draw a correlation. I just think that the world that we live in is so much more social media and so much more online, and people are just less human now than they were in 2008, 2009. Is that a terrible thing to say? Is that
No,
No,
awful?
not at all.
I
Yeah.
think it's totally accurate. And I
Yeah.
think that there are many reasons for it, but social media is a big one because
Yeah.
there's a lot of issues with, I mean, all of it, but say something like Twitter in particular, where so much of the discussion happens, but same with Facebook and so on. One of the most obvious issues, of course, is that people forget they're dealing with other human beings, right?
Right.
So especially when you have so many people who are anonymous and you can't see their names or their faces, and
Hmm.
it's much easier you're empathetically disassociated from them, right?
Mhm.
You can't
Right.
see them, certainly can't touch them. You can't have that natural relation where you can see when you're causing someone pain or when you're both on a level that is humorous. If someone's being
Hmm.
sarcastic, there's no tone, there's no body language, there's no anything. Jokes are often even missed because you can't tell if someone's being serious or not.
Right.
So that's a big point. But I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and not a lot of people make this point, is that conversations happen in reverse. Conversations happen backwards. It's like constantly jumping into the middle of a conversation, right? So if you meet someone in the real world, you don't start with discussing like some inflammatory political or religious issue, or sharing like a very strong perspective on something that people have feelings about. You say, hey, nice to meet you. You know, what's your name? Oh, cool. Where are you from? I'm this. You start with the commonality.
Right.
And then maybe if you talk for, tens of minutes or even hours, then you start getting into stuff that's a little bit deeper. But by that point, you've built some rapport. You've understood this is a decent person, humanity. You may differ on politics, religion, whatever, but you're not starting with that. You don't walk down the street just shouting your political and religious opinions in the public square, certainly not in an inflammatory way. But something like Twitter or even Facebook to some degree is just like this empty cave where you just walk in and you shout an opinion or you say something and then waves of people react and respond to it. And it's fun mob. And it's interesting. Yeah, it's fun and it's interesting, but it all happens backwards. And then I think for each follower you have, or for each person who knows about you on the internet, that's one translation of you, right? So for however many followers you have or how many people know about you, that is that many caricatures of you, right? That's that many avatars out there. So there's millions of versions of each of us on the internet, right? People think they know you, and they think they know all your beliefs and everything about you. And sometimes it can be accurate, right? Someone who's been listening to you for a long time, they'll have a much more accurate picture. But there's also millions of people who just saw that one tweet or one blog post or one thing, or heard a clip you said in a podcast, and they're like, that's that person. They're this, and this. They think they know everything about you, and they are way, way, way off base.
Absolutely. So in fact, we just had an example of that yesterday. And the reason that I have Ron DeSantis's cutout behind me is because a lot of times on our show, we tease about how I have a crush on him, right? Zuby's like, is there somebody you don't have a crush on?
No, there's nobody.
And so I joke about it all the time, and he's not the only one, right? Like there's this guy too. You probably know him because you're from the UK. Do you know Robbie Williams? Okay,
yeah, not personally.
Oh my God, you know who Robbie Williams is? Oh God,
people in the UK know who he is.
Yeah, he's massive.
So I joke about my crushes on these people. And we had a woman yesterday who was so alarmed that I am trying to basically like shove Casey DeSantis out of the picture so that I can like pursue her husband. And I'm like, come on, that is of course not true. It's all in good fun. It's a joke. It's all, people that know me, just like you said, people who have listened for a long time and know me, know that I'm very happily married and that this is all just in good fun. But you're right. They create this perception of you that is totally inaccurate based on one thing that they heard or one tweet that they saw. It's a really interesting social experiment we're all in.
And here's another thing. Like when it comes to people responding, like this is years ago, and Mark will probably remember this. There was this dude who was coming after me like for comments or something. Do you remember the libertarian dude? Remember the libertarian dude that came after me? And he was just, I don't even remember what he was saying. He was saying mean things to me. And we kind of had a back and forth because this is what we do. We'll spar with people online sometimes. And usually, after a while, after a couple of years, I just stopped doing it because it became exhausting fighting with people online. And I just thought, this is taking way too much of my energy. But I decided to just, spar with him a little bit. And then I said, I'm going to approach this guy differently. And I knew that he was in Indiana. This is when I was living in Indiana. And I said, you know what we should do? We should meet and have coffee and discuss this. And so I said, let's talk about this meet me at 40 Monument Circle where I worked in Indy. I said, and we'll talk about this. Come on over and we'll talk about this together in person. We'll have coffee and we'll discuss this over coffee. And he immediately freaked out. You could tell he freaked out because he was like, oh my gosh, like she wants to meet in person and talk about this. I don't know if I can do that. Like, cause I thought we were supposed to just be fighting here online. Like I thought so we were just sparring. And when you actually like put the human element in a fight and you say, I'm an actual person, I am a breathing person with blood running through my body, and I'm a mom and I'm a sister and I'm a friend and I'm a wife and I'm a human being, and I want to have this discussion with you, and we can talk about this over coffee. People freak out. Like they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that, but they want to fight with you online. And it's interesting how like that throws a whole different dynamic into the conversation, which is, it shows you how far we've come as a society. They don't want to be human. They want to fight online.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things at play here. You know, I mean, of course, there's a lot of people with all types of mental health problems. There's people who are just angry and frustrated for various reasons. And you happen to be the person who comes across their feed or their timeline that day. I mean, there are millions of people right now scrolling through social media, explicitly looking for things to get angry at.
Exactly.
Right?
Totally.
Hundreds of millions. And so sometimes you're just that person who has that tweet or that post at that moment, and they rage at you. They project it onto you. And so they're not really mad at you. They're just mad, and you happen to be the target of the day. This has happened hundreds of times to me. I'm sure it's happened hundreds of times to you at this point.
And they're mad at who they think you are. And so not at you, but just who they've created that you are in their own minds. To Amy Jo's point, like if they actually met you in person and had coffee with you, you'd probably get along great.
Totally.
Yeah. No, have you ever met a hater in real life? Because I haven't.
Have not.
Have we met haters in real life?
No, thousands of fans, but I've never met a hater.
We put two guys in prison. So we
never met them.
Actually, we did in courtrooms. We've seen them in courtrooms.
Well, but we didn't actually
we
meet
didn't
them
actually
and have a
coffee
conversation
with them, but we've seen them in courtrooms. So I mean, and I think when you see them, and then it's a very sad situation because you're just like, God, I mean, there are people out there who do need genuine help, you know?
Was that like people making threats or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's a crazy world out there. And I think you're right. I think there are people who are searching for things and needing things. And that goes into a whole mental health discussion where we need people, we need places for people to go. And I think a lot of times people will go onto social media looking for something that they're not getting here. They're not getting something here, you know?
Well, it's definitely an outlet, you know, and that can be a positive outlet. It can be neutral. It can be negative. And I think people get caught in both. You know, you can get caught up in a positivity spiral, which is a great thing, where you're showing love and spreading love and it's coming back at you and everything's really positive and you're lifting people up and, you know, it comes back at you. But people also fall into these negativity spirals, both online and offline, where all the focus is on the negative and the bad things, and you treat people badly. And if you treat people badly, they don't tend to respond very well either. If you approach someone with hostility, they tend to be hostile back, and so on. And the truth with the world is, you know, not to get too philosophical, is that, you know, the world is both amazing and wonderful and terrible and dark. Like it's all of them. All of human history is. You can focus on, I mean, depending on where you put your focus on any given day, you can put yourself into like a really bad, angry, sad, upset, outraged mood. Or you can put yourself into a really positive and grateful one. And I think it's important to, you know, maintain some semblance of balance so that you're still attached to reality. But I think that sometimes people think that being real is always being negative and always being angry and always being outraged. And that, you know, people just get addicted to it, because people can certainly get addicted to negative energy. I mean, we've really seen that over the past 2 years. We've got people who are addicted to being afraid, right? Or addicted to projecting fear and anger on other people, right? Like they're genuinely addicted. They do not want to give it up. You tell them, hey, look, you don't need to be afraid, right? Like you can chill. And they're like, no, I want to be afraid. I don't care about
what do they call that? They call it doom scrolling, right? Isn't that the term?
Oh, really?
Isn't that the official term for it? Is when you just are constantly seeking out reinforcement of your fear. It's doom scrolling. And I thought that term was so great. I saw that the other day and I was like, yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah. When someone's on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and they're just swiping, looking for the negative dopamine hit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Exactly. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that was a thing. I guess I'm not a doom scroller. You know what? It's interesting because Because Zuby, one of the things that we're most proud of, I definitely will speak for Miriam because I know she'll agree with me, is that we have, unlike a lot of people who do what we do and who've done what we've done since, the dinosaur ages, because we've been doing this forever. But
What you mean? Aren't you both 21?
We times a lot of years, yeah. But we build a community. Like, we're all about building a community, and our community's sort of taken on a life of itself, and we like that. Like, we kind of these people that's one thing we'll talk to each other, like, how do we do this? How do we build this? Because it was very organic the way our community was built, kind of like itself. Like, we did it, we're responsible for it, and we feel responsible for it. But at the same time, these people have sort of taken on a life of their own, and they're friends with each other, and they travel with each other, and they pray for each other, and they do all these, and they are very positive. And so they keep us very positive. And so it's just like this really neat group of people who we're kind of like, it's like a baby that we made together. It's like this child that is sort of like grown up, and like it's our little community, and they're wonderful. I mean, they're like these really wonderful people, and I think that's I'm really super proud of that. Aren't you proud of that, Miriam?
Oh yeah, I mean, so it's one of the things that makes this all so worthwhile and so satisfying and fulfilling, and all of those things. I mean, it feels really good not to know. I mean, obviously it feels really good when we get that positive attention and people like what we do. But when we watch the conversations and the transformational relationships happening because of what we do, that's even more meaningful. Like, that's really amazing.
You said it way better than I did. Yeah.
Well, I think I think that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And one thing I really love that you both do is you maintain this positivity and humor and fun, because especially in the world of not even just politics, but US politics and social cultural stuff, it's very easy, especially over a long period of time, to become very negative. I've seen it happen with many people. I know a lot of people in the social commentary, political commentary sphere. And because you are constantly dealing with nonsense and fighting stupid ideas and stupid people and dealing with all this negativity, like we've all gone through that process of having to develop a tough skin, right? Having to develop that exoskeleton so that someone can't just call you a name and you curl up into into the fetal position. But it's hard to do that and not just become a savage, right? Just become like this really, really hard, angry, fire-breathing dragon who's just like every day. You're fighting the monsters so much that you think you have to become the monster to continue the fight. And when I talk to you, or when I interact with you both online, it's always fun, it's lighthearted, it's jovial. You can even be, there can be something out there that genuinely makes you angry or outraged, or something happens and it's upsetting. And you can talk about that and address it in a real way, but not let it consume you, not let it take you away from the things that you believe in, and your perspective and your gratitude and your happiness about, your God or family and love and kindness and friendship, all of that stuff. And I think a lot of people can learn from that. Because I think it is very difficult to do for years and not become that person. And it's something I'm cautious about. Like, I always have to, first of all, I take every Sunday off Twitter, and that's important.
Nice.
But also
I didn't
just
know that about you.
Yeah. But also
that's
just
good, because Twitter still is the 13th circle of hell, Zuby. It still is.
Yeah, but you have to use humor. You have to use humor, because if you don't, you just become angry. And I totally understand that, because there is so much foolishness going on.
It's interesting that you say that, because there was a time when we lost those I don't even want to say when America, and because of Joe Biden, we lost those 13 Marines in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. I reached a breaking point that day when that news broke, where I felt like I was going to have a breakdown. Like, I was done. I could not I couldn't doom scroll anymore. I couldn't
Mm.
consume another piece of news that day because I just was so overwhelmed by all of the horrible news. And I reached a point where I knew I just gotta stop planning for tomorrow's radio show and just step back and
Mm.
and take a break. And I did. And for me, it was like I needed some hours, right? I needed an evening and I needed an overnight, and then I was ready to go in the morning. But I think what happens is that some people don't recognize when their breaking points are and when they do need to step back, not just for their own mental health, but because of how they might treat other people. And so
Yes.
then you end up in this like rage spiral where you're upset, but you're projecting that out into the world, and it's not healthy for you or for anybody else. And so that for me was like a real moment where I was like, I gotta get out of this for a minute. I gotta step back. Otherwise I'm going to lose my absolute shit. And so that was a good move for me. And then I was back, and then I was able to be okay again. But people need to realize where those breaking points are, I think.
I think for me, it's like if I had to do this alone, I don't know if I'd do it. I mean, honest to God, I don't think I could do it without Miriam. So, I mean, she probably could do it without me, but I don't think I could do it without her, honestly, because I just don't think I could. I think that's the reason that I stay. It's just because she's so happy to begin with. And so she's like this big giant burst of technicolor every day. But I mean, it's like, it's just one of those, it's one of those things where politics, it really is. Politics is tough. I mean, we were both in different professions before we did politics. And I was a medical technical writer / adjunct professor. I mean, it was a completely different world before we did politics. And when you think, oh, politics will be fun, yay! And then you get in there and you're like, oh my gosh, politics is gross. These people are gross.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow. And it really is one of those things where if I didn't have her to lean on and have her like smiley face there every day, I'd probably be in a pile of despair. And so, it's one of those, at the end of the day, it's all about humanity for me, not to sound corny, but we have to have a shred of, we're all human. We have to treat each other with, even people that I don't really like very much. I mean, it's like it's humanity, I mean, it's all about that. And we have to be decent,
Absolutely. What is it that's kept you going throughout this time, given everything that we've said? What's been that motivating or driving force? What's been that mission that you want to achieve that's kept this all going for over a decade?
Mine's easy. Do you know what yours is? Mine's easy. Mine's my kids. I mean, I want the country to be the country that I know it is, and that the founders wanted it to be, and the country that I grew up in. And I don't really recognize my country very much these days.
What do you mean when you say that?
Just the leadership is so weak. Their freedoms I see being chipped away at. I just see a lot of things that I hold dear, like, when I see things being taught in school, like gender and gender pronouns instead of actual subjects, and, CRT and things like that being taught in school. And schools are different. The country looks different. People just everything in the country just looks different than it did when I was my daughter's age at 12. I just think a lot of things in this country are different. Just the landscape of the country, culture rot in this country is rampant. The culture is very different. I mean, I know that makes me sound old, because I'm sure that the country probably looked different to my mom when I was a 12-year-old than it did to her when she was a 12-year-old. And so I know that culture changes, but I mean, I don't know. I look at like what was acceptable when I was a kid, and then I look at like Cardi B singing WAP, and it's, I don't know. I just, you know what I mean? I just think that things are I think that culturally we're kind of spiraling, and there's a lot of stuff that I just don't like for her from a cultural standpoint. And then just from a country standpoint, I think we're on a socialist spiral, and I don't like that for her. I mean, you look at taxes alone from an economic standpoint. I mean, the taxes have considerably gone up. And for her, I'm thinking you're probably going to be at a 50% tax rate by the time you're my age, if not more. And that's a frightening concept. So
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah.
I'll weigh in too on just what keeps me going, because I think she expressed it very well when she talked about kids, for sure. But for me, it's like this just, and I don't know if it's partly naivete, but I have just relentless optimism and hope about where we can be, and I don't ever want to. I just don't ever think I can give up on America. You know what I mean? And so as
Mhm.
long as I see optimism and hope and a reason to be hopeful and optimistic, then I just feel like we got to stay in the fight, man.
right.
And so, whatever our personal reasons are for doing it, and for both of us, it is absolutely our kids, because we want to make sure that they understand the great America that we've always known and loved. But for me, it's just more than that. I can't help myself. I can't help but feel positive about being lucky, and feeling lucky to be in this country, and to know the greatness of America, and want to share that and help people understand how great it is, because
Yes.
it's so sad to me that so much of our younger generations now don't, that they actually are
Right.
being taught more and more to hate it, and
To
that
not
I
love it.
can't,
Right.
I can't deal with that. So as long as
Mhm.
I got to have that fight, I'm going to have it.
Yeah. 'Cause
Absolutely.
it's,
Yeah, no, some
yeah.
really interesting points there. I think man, where do I even go on this? There's so much I could say. I think there are a lot of things about the USA that Americans themselves don't realize or overlook. And I think actually that's a source of a lot of problems, because two things I always say are really important in life are perspective and gratitude. And I think
Yes.
that this is across the West in general, but I think in the USA in particular, in recent decades, there's been an absence of both of those things, sometimes for fair reasons and sometimes for, I think, silly reasons. I mean, first of all, most Americans never leave the country, right?
Yes.
So that's just a fact. That's not an opinion. It's a fact. So when people are talking about the USA, and sometimes whether they're over egging something that's positive or overdoing something that's negative, there's not really a perspective, right? I often say, well, compared to what? Right. So you'll hear people say, especially more on the left, they'll say, the USA is a racist country. My question is, compared to what?
Mm.
Right?
Right.
Compared to what? What are you comparing to? Right? Geographically and historically, what are you comparing to? Is there racism in the USA? Yes, absolutely. Was it very
Mhm.
prominent in the past? Yes, absolutely. But what did that look like on a global scale? What does it look like today in 2022 on a historical scale? Right. So what are you comparing to? Or even with so many of the issues, and whether this is someone more on the left or more on the right with certain things, I'm like, well, I understand the grievances, I understand the problems, but if you look around the world, or even if you look at history, is there which country would you rather be in? Or like, what
Right.
time period would you rather be born in? Would you prefer to be in 1922, 1822, 1722? No, probably not. You'd rather be here now. So yeah, there are all these problems. But you have to maintain that perspective and gratitude. And then I think another
Gratitude.
factor as
Yes.
well is I also think people forget how young the country is. Right?
Yeah.
I'm from the UK. Like the US, as far as the world goes, the USA is a teenager. And
Right.
I think the USA behaves like a teenager in a lot of ways. It's a very chaotic country. I say this all the time. There's such a broad range of people. It's truly the most diverse country in the world, not just in the superficial way, right? But it is the most racially and ethnically diverse country, certainly up there. But in terms of ideologies and religions and ideas, and it's an experiment, right? It's this experiment that's only been running for under 250 years or so. I mean, the college I went to in university, like my college in Oxford, was founded in the 1100s.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So
Wow.
like you can go
That is,
if you go to the
yes.
UK, you can find pubs that were founded in the year 800, not 1800, 800.
Oh my
Right. So
God.
I mean,
like
that is just
the
crazy perspective. Crazy
right, or
perspective.
yeah, just go around Europe, go to Paris, go to Rome, go to Athens, like go and you're like, okay, like these places are old, and the buildings are still there, and you can still see the hit. So it's like, and then you think, okay, the US is like really, really young.
I love that comparison. I love it. I
Yeah.
love saying that the U.S. is like a teenager. I would go a step further and say it's like a teenage girl, because teenage girls are they're very snarky and snippy, and we're kind of like that sometimes. So many of us are like that. Yeah, I love that comparison. I love it.
Yeah, so I think it gives people, reason to be optimistic and hopeful, because it's like,
Yes.
well, and even for the people who, even if you want to focus on some of the negative things in American history, it's also like, well, stuff was a lot, man, like totally accept it, acknowledge all that. But like, look at how much progress has been made in 100 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, there are new challenges and issues now, but look at the USA in 1922, right? 100 years is that's like one long lifetime. That's one person.
Yeah.
One person ago, right? Oh my gosh, like I could be killed for having this conversation with you, right? Like
Exactly.
this whole interaction, not legally possible, not socially possible, not culturally acceptable, right? All kinds of stuff, right? And so yes, it's good to acknowledge that, but also like, yo, look how much progress has been made in 100 years is nothing.
Maybe we wouldn't be able to have a business. We wouldn't be able to vote. I mean, think of all this. Like, there's so much stuff in this entire podcast that wouldn't be able to happen.
No, right, and exactly, like, because people want to be, the people like to talk about the old straight white men thing, and it's like, yeah, okay, like, yeah, actually, you're right on that front, right? It's like, well, yeah, if you were not in a certain demographic or even social class or whatever, then yeah, things were bad. People were way more violent. People were far more intolerant. Like, there are certain, I think society is always moving. In the West, it's like things are moving forward and backwards simultaneously. So I totally agree that there are certain aspects of social values, cultural values, morality, which I think have backslid, say, in the past couple decades.
Right.
But there are also things that have improved by leaps and bounds. If you want to talk about like fair treatment of other people, treating people as individuals, not just as groups, like that's improved so much. I think that's why I get so annoyed by these weird woke authoritarian leftist types who are literally trying to shift things backwards again, right? Yeah. They're trying to get people to judge people based on their skin color again. You're trying to make these people feel oppressed. These people feel guilty. You're trying to tell women this, tell black people that, tell gay people that. I'm like, bro, stop. You're moving things backwards. You're now going backwards. It's like Pac-Man,
they're segregationists. They're basically and essentially they're segregationists is what they are.
Yes.
Which is,
and it's
ridiculous.
Like, yo, this was tried before, bro. This was tried before. Right? So don't overcorrect so hard. You come back on the other side of the screen and it's not the way forward. But yeah, I think that's some perspective for anyone listening, just as to, we've got issues. Every country has its challenges, and every era has its challenges. But there are huge upsides. And while it feels like we live in the craziest time period ever, we also live in the best and most prosperous and most healthy and most equal time period ever. So I think those things always need to be kept in balance.
It's funny that you say that about the perspective, because one of the things that we wrote in our book from 2014 was about like the American definition of poverty and how skewed it was, and how all of these stats and data points and figures about Americans in poverty, it sounds awful, right? But then when you look to see what a typical impoverished American has, they have a large screen TV, they've got a smartphone, they likely have a car and a roof over their heads in most cases. And so your point about perspective is really well taken, because people don't think through how much more blessed and prosperous American and other Western countries are in comparison to what true poverty really looks like. And that's just one example.
In other countries, in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, my family
background.
Oh, for real? I mean, my family background is originally from Nigeria. And if you're talking about poverty in Africa or certain parts of Asia, you're talking about a whole nother
Right.
level of it. I remember, I've told the story before, but I remember meeting when I was last in Nigeria, or a few years ago when I was in Nigeria, and I met a guy who was maybe like 19 or 20, and he was talking to me about how he really wanted to go to the US. And I asked him why. And he said something which was humorous and very flippant, but to me it was actually really deep. He said, because in America, even the poor people are fat.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like it's funny, but it's also like a really deep thing. It's like, yeah, like you're talking about a different
It's true.
type of poverty, right? It's poverty in a way, but compared to like a sense of absolute poverty where someone doesn't have enough to eat, doesn't have clean water to drink, and so on.
Right.
Talking about the same
It's a
thing.
whole different kind. It's American poverty.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So where do you see things going in the future, especially as mothers? What are you concerned about, and what are you optimistic about?
I see grannies on the right. Isn't that what you see, Miriam? Grannies on the right.
Can we trademark that? Do we need to go ahead and reserve that domain?
We need to do it today because I just put it in the universe, so we should probably do that. But yeah, I mean, I see us keeping going, and I don't see us stopping anytime soon. And this is something that we've been doing forever, and I don't think we know how to stop. Do we know how to stop? We don't know how to stop. No, it's and honestly, things have changed so much over the past 13 years that we've sort of just evolved with the times. We've evolved with the Bidens and the Cardi B's and everything else in between, and so we've kind of rolled with it.
Right.
And the platforms, all the different social platforms. I mean, we have a TikTok now, Zuby. I don't even know how to do all the dances. We're going to have to learn to do all the dances on TikTok. I'm going to have to learn. So,
oh no.
We got to figure
out
the TikTok,
not the TikTok.
So we're navigating through all of that, and hopefully we'll come out on the other end and not look like complete morons. That is
we'll be shaking our rakes at everybody.
We're shaking our canes, Zuby.
That's right.
Shaking our grandma canes at some point. But we're just going to keep doing what we do, and building our communities where we can build them, and trying to make people understand that conservatism is it's cool. I mean, it's cool to be. We're like the counterculture now. Conservatives are the punk rockers. It used to be, it used to be that liberals were the punk rockers like a long time ago. And now we're the counterculture. It's really weird how we are anti-establishment now. That's what we are now. I'm proud to be a punk rocker. And so I'm an old punk rocker. That's what I am. And I think, it's the way to be.
Awesome. And what's the best place for people to find and follow you online?
chicksontheright.com. And on most of the socials, we are at Chicks on Right. And that is really because there wasn't enough room on Twitter when that first started to do Chicks on the Right without losing a letter. So I thought, well, we'll just be Chicks on Right. And that's where we are most everywhere. We're really trying to grow our locals platform. So if people would like to be supporters of ours, it's chicksontheright.locals.com. But you can find us absolutely on all the other socials as well.
Amazing. Mark and Daisy, always a pleasure to speak to you both. Thank you so much for
coming
on the show.
Talking to you. So fun talking to you. We love it. We love it, Zuby. Anytime. We need to have you back on ours too. We need to have you with us.
Yes.
We'll make it happen.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay, we will.
And I'm still holding out for that bedtime story.
I've got a children's book coming out in July.
You do?
And you're reading it. You're doing the audio version.
I haven't done the audiobook yet, but I will.
Yay!
Oh my gosh. Can you give us
the bedtime story request might happen.
Do you have a detail? We're going to totally interview you, but do you have like a quick detail? You get what is it? Do you have like a preview? Like you could tell me about it really quick?
Yeah, sure. It's called The Candy Calamity. It's a book for children. I'd say the main age range would be maybe 5 to 10. although it could go a bit below and a bit older. And it's about the importance of healthy eating and exercise. So it's a collaboration with Brave Books, and the illustrations are amazing. The story's fun. The whole thing rhymes. I'm a rapper.
And
so
you're going to talk about getting Jacksonated in it? That's my favorite Zubyism.
Yep, getting Jacksonated. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm very proud of it.
I love it. Congrats. That's so fantastic. Good for you. I love it. I love the topic. That's so great. I love that.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
To you. That's awesome. Well, we can't wait to talk to you soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for coming on. Much love.
Talk soon. Bye.